So you have to be super quick. Well done for keeping your peas on your fork. Well done for sitting down and not hitting your brother or sister. Getting in with those praise, which sounds rather corny and American, doesn't it? Sounds a bit Mickey Mouse, but actually it has an effect on kids. They start feeling better about themselves. Oh yeah, I did do that rather well. It sticks inside.
Welcome to All Aboard, where we help parents navigate the ADHD journey. I'm Claire, and today we'll be talking about understanding ADHD treatments and why parenting matters with our expert guest, Professor Stephen Scott. Stephen is a Professor of Child Health and Behaviour at the Institute of Psychiatry, Psychology and Neuroscience at King's College London, and Director of the National Academy for Parenting Research. He is also a consultant child and adolescent psychiatrist at the Maudsley Hospital, where he specialises in ADHD and challenging behaviour. His research specialises in the most effective ways to help children be happier and better adjusted. And as the author of best-selling textbook Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, Stephen literally wrote the book. He is also part of the Parenting Matters team, an online course which helps more parents support their children with behavioural and emotional issues. In 2014, Stephen was made a Commander of the British Empire by the Queen. In 2017, he was elected a Fellow of the Academy of Medical Sciences, and he is President of the Association for Child and Adolescent Mental Health. Welcome aboard, Stephen.
Hi, pleased to meet you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. As a consultant child and adolescent psychiatrist at the Maudsley Hospital, you've been working directly with ADHD children and their families in your clinic for the last 25 years. Is that right?
That is absolutely right. Yes, I have indeed.
So you understand the challenges and behaviours as well as seeing the effects of the treatment firsthand. But before we get into that, I'd like to begin by talking about something that's dominating just about every ADHD related headline at the moment. And that is it being on the rise. Now, I believe that's quite positive that we're seeing an increase in ADHD diagnosis. But why is this happening in your opinion?
Because it's being recognised much more, finally. Actually, if you look at surveys, including during COVID, there hasn't been an increase in the population frequency or prevalence of ADHD, but people are finally becoming much more aware of it. So the referral rate has gone up 3 or 4 times. In tandem, the referral rates for autism have gone up 3 or 4 times. So the whole concept of neurodiversity and some kids being born a bit different is finally getting a grip. And I am so pleased at that, because up until now, such kids would be called naughty, difficult, oppositional, or their parents. And when I first studied actually psychology before medicine a million years ago, we were taught that we're all the same and any child characteristics are due to the way they're being treated by their parents. So you could get blamed for that. The notion that there is genetics affecting behavior. We knew that genetics affected your height and your eye color, but behavior, what? But we now know that's absolutely the case. And so I'm very pleased that more people are being referred. They may or may not get a diagnosis, but it's great that people are becoming more aware of this. Although I have friends who are in teacher training and they get like half a day still on mental health in children. I find that very shocking.
Yeah, that is certainly shocking, because it's, as you say, it's great that people are becoming much more aware of it and are seeking out the help and understanding their children. Or if, like me, at the beginning of this journey, thinking, it's me, what am I doing wrong? And actually understanding that, no, there's something else at play here. But how do we then sort of dispute the misconception that gets presented? Because that's quite hard as a parent, I think, when you are recognising differences in your child and you want to do something to positively help them. And yet we get fed this information of overdiagnosis, or more recently, some controversy over misdiagnosis. Why is it important to kind of dispute that misconception?
Well, so first of all, yeah, you might have some people, maybe some old school teacher saying, oh, rubbish, it's just got a difficult character or something like that. It hasn't really got ADHD. So I think it is really important to get rid of that misconception, because so much can be done, starting with understanding. And it's interesting, because I have to be careful as a doctor. Some people say evil doctors giving people labels. I have yet to meet a parent who doesn't feel a sense of relief, sometimes shock, sometimes some grief, expecting a quote normal child. But actually, there's so much body of knowledge of understanding what you can do about it that I think that is terrific. So I think, and it is important to get a precise assessment because every child is different. It could be that actually they're what we just call oppositional or defiant, a lot of challenging behavior, which is not ADHD. Vice versa, some kids with challenging behavior can have ADHD beneath it, which is missed because all they're seeing is something, shut up, I'm not going to do that, mum. I'm not going to do that, sir. So it's important to recognize it when it is there. And then some other children might not have ADHD, but might, for example, be very emotionally dysregulated. They might very easily go off on one. And they might be just those kind of kids who are very touchy and go off. And that the condition is different, the management is different. So that is why it's very important. And a few kids might be somewhat depressed and have a sort of irritable temperament. So all of those things need to be respected, and every child is different.
They really are different. And you mentioned then that's why the management of it becomes really important. So once you've got that diagnosis, what role does medication play in this? I think this is a really important topic.
I think it is. And I speak as somebody who is so old that he saw One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest with Jack Nicholson. That is a film where evil authorities drug this free spirit and he ends up having a lobotomy. So when I was a young doctor, pediatrician, and then psychiatrist, I wasn't going to put chemicals into beautiful kids' brains. I was very anti it. And even now, I've been to conferences where the Moonies are holding placards saying, don't do this. Something that helped change my mind is I do research as well as being a clinician at the Institute of Psychiatry, Psychology and Neuroscience, as it's now called. And when we scan kids with ADHD brains, there's an area called the prefrontal area, the sort of Clapham junction where everything goes through from the top bit, the frontal lobes, down to actually what you do. And that just doesn't work as well. It doesn't have as much blood, sugar, or oxygen going to it. Now, when they're in the scanner and give them one shot of Ritalin, they look normal. They become just like a typically developing kid. So I thought, what? If they had a vitamin deficiency, you wouldn't withhold that. So that rather changed my view that actually they've got a certain neurotransmitter, as it turns out, a reduced level. All you're doing is boosting them up and making them like any other kid, giving them a level playing field in life. So I think it has an important role to play. Medication.
A level playing field is how I describe it, actually. If I'm talking about, my son who does take medication, when he's in the classroom, it's about leveling the playing field. And I really liked your analogy of Clapham Junction for the prefrontal cortex. I've heard it called air traffic control system, which I liked, but Clapham Junction is a good one. I like that. It's very visual. So what you said there about being able to see that very, very stark and visual difference on a scan is really fascinating. So how does ADHD medication work? How does it do what you then see? And what are the benefits?
Well, it rebalances the neurotransmitter system. There are two or three neurotransmitters in ADHD. And the most effective medications are stimulants, as you will know. There are two of them. The most commonly prescribed one is methylphenidate. It's got lots of different brand names. Generic is short-acting, it lasts for about 4 hours. And then there are long-acting ones, things like Concerta XL. Now there are lots of the NHS prefers other ones because they're cheaper, like Zenidate XL and so on, Zagetin XL. There are many brands, and that is the one we start with, and that is effective in about 80 and 90% of cases. And of all medications that have effect on behavior or mood, like antidepressants, antipsychotics, it has the biggest effects. It can be transformative in many cases. And it may help all three sets of symptoms that you have, the triad of ADHD, namely ability to concentrate and attend, the impulsiveness, the always blurting things out and not stopping and waiting your turn, grabbing the food before mum sat down on the table, impatience, and the motor running around, which actually on its own isn't very disabling, just somebody who runs around, but although people notice it. But it can help all of those symptoms. So it really can make a big difference. If that doesn't work, we then might try the other stimulant, which is called dexamphetamine. You can gather from that name that it might be a bit of a party drug. And in fact, because these things were sold as slimming aids in the 70s, they became controlled drugs. Actually, they're incredibly safe. And by the way, dexamphetamine was given to World War II pilots to keep them awake to shoot down German planes. And of course, equally importantly, James Bond took it in Casino Royale to keep himself awake when he was gambling.
I've missed that. I'm going to have to rewatch that film.
Well, actually, no, it's in the book. It's in the book.
Oh, is it in the book? Okay. Well, I haven't read the book, but yes, that's very interesting.
So obviously the two main side effects are keeping you awake at night. I call it like a strong cup of coffee. And also it can make you lose a bit of weight. So you have to be judicious, have a big breakfast before you take it, and allow kids to raid the fridge late at night if necessary. Keep an eye on their weight. People have been, what I love about it is it's in and out of your body, and it's what you see is what you get, unlike, say, antidepressants, which take quite a long time to build up, and then you have to withdraw them very slowly, or benzodiazepines, Valium and Librium. You can have a crash when you stop taking, become more irritable. This is just in and out, so it's great. People are concerned over the long term whether, you might become some kind of addict. Actually, for kids with ADHD, those who have been prescribed stimulants end up with less addictions to any kind of drugs because they lead a better lifestyle. They don't drop out of school, feel bad about themselves and hang out with the bad crowd and end up doing drugs. Little mantra for the management of children with ADHD is there are three things you're trying to avoid. One is them feeling bad about themselves and having low self-esteem. Two is that they can achieve academically to their potential and have a good life and, get good GCSEs or A-levels, and if necessary, go to uni and get a good job. And thirdly, that they can make good peer relationships with the regular kids in the class and not drop out and hang out with the bad crowd, which can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that addiction point's a really interesting one. That's something I wasn't aware of. And my son takes methylphenidate, the extended release. It's Concerta that he uses, and it's been massively effective. And obviously, I appreciate it's a very personal choice, and everybody's body metabolizes things differently. But for him, it has been massively effective. And I learned recently about the phrase the Ritalin ruler, and you touched on it then, that it's significantly more effective. Is this right, than any other medication for any other disease or disorder? Almost twice the effectiveness of antidepressants.
Exactly. Yeah, we have something called an effect size, which is you can compare it with anything else, and it is like that. There are secondary drugs, and sometimes we add in something called guanfacine, and there's a relatively new kid on the block called atomoxetine, which can help, but they're not as effective. The first thing, stimulants are way better, if possible. And the other thing we should just mention is there's a small but definite effect proven for omega-3 and 6 oils, which you get in fish oils and things. So people might want to try thinking about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, my son takes those as well. I know there's a kind of recommended level, isn't there, requirement within the omega-3 that you're taking itself. But that leads into then a very holistic approach where it's not just a case of, medication has an amazing effect, certainly from my experience, but almost that on its own for me hasn't been enough, or for my son, I should say, hasn't been enough. So we have then tried to build on that with other things, not just omega-3s, but in general, a much more holistic approach. So why is that important too?
Because, is it John Donne who said no man is an island? Because kids are bound to be affected by people's reaction to them around them. And which of us, when we're tired and annoyed as an adult and a bit ratty, or trying to get all kids off to school into a car or something like that, can't get particularly annoyed at somebody dawdling who's gone off and done something else? In fact, one of my questions is, when you send in helping the diagnosis, when you send the kid upstairs and say, go upstairs, put your dirty socks in the washing basket and do your teeth, pull back the duvet, how many of them can follow it through? And the ADHD kids will say, there's my model aeroplane on the way up. And of course, if you've got other things to do, that can get quite annoying. So ADHD kids do cop more criticism and negative comments, understandably. But that can get internalized, particularly if it has a harsh tone. I'm not some sort of soppy, let it all hang out Californian approach to parenting, but you can be very calm with consequences. But if you start getting, don't be so stupid and that sort of thing, things like that, it does actually, if it's really got tone, you can think of saying something like, It's not just the content, it's the tone. Oh, you little devil, they smile at you as they make a little mess or thing. That's somebody says, oh, you little devil. That actually affects kids' brains and makes them more shaky and more nervous. It's not good. So we can talk in a minute about how you, as a parent, you can try and stay calm yourself, but it is terribly important. And of course, once the child gets, perhaps they're different from other kids that you know or your other children, they can start copying negativity quite a lot of the time, and then it becomes difficult to see when they are doing stuff. Because even ADHD kids are probably okay 70% of the time or something. So spotting that and praising it, and of course it can be difficult because they're always moving on to something else. So you have to be super quick. Well done for keeping your peas on your fork. Well done for sitting down and not hitting your brother or sister. Getting in with those praise, which sounds rather corny and American, doesn't it? Sounds a bit Mickey Mouse, but actually it has an effect on kids. They start feeling better about themselves. Oh yeah, I did do that rather well. It sticks inside. In fact, all of us actually carry around with us a bit about the way our parents treated us, don't we? We can probably describe our mothers and fathers quite well. And in fact, I've got a colleague called Alison Corner who's started a website called My Horrid Parent for people who did cop a lot of negativity and feel the need to work it out and cope with it.
Wow.
So inadvertently, particularly if we're annoyed or the children is quite annoyed, we can get overly critical. But it's easy for me to say that. It is then, how do we teach people alternative methods of handling kids? And the other point to make is many ADHD kids aren't just impulsive. They get quite a lot of attention for being naughty and subconsciously can be actively defiant, not just that, no, I'm not going to, no, I'm not going to come off that screen. And goodness me, we could talk for an hour about screens because particularly ADHD kids love screens. So they are what I call stimulus driven. New stimulus comes in, they look around, that's why they're distractible. They go around, they look up, hear a car engine, go to see what. I probably would have been diagnosed with ADHD myself in my childhood. I've never had it. But if a car went by, I knew the brand of the car by the sound of the engine. I'd leap out of my bed, go to the window to have a look. And ADHD kids are very stimulus driven, but wow, I mean, it's like going to heaven and back. Video games just bang, lots of visual stimuli at you and sound stimuli. So they're completely engrossing, more so than other people. Other people have a better chance of stopping when they're told it's time to stop. Now you've had your time, it's dinner time, get off your fortnight or whatever it is.
Oh gosh, don't get me started on that.
But it's very hard for them because they're very stimulus driven. So finding ways of managing all those things is really helpful. I find parents appreciate different techniques they can use.
Absolutely. So that leads on to the obvious question. What are the different techniques? What are the most effective ways that we as parents can help our children? Because as you said, this clearly influences their self-esteem and effectively will make them happier and improve their well-being. So it's really important. How do we do that?
Well, I think it is useful if you can, and it's not always easy, create 10 minutes special time a day where this child is the apple of your eye and it's their agenda. Because if you think what it's like to be a child, it's get up, get dressed, eat up your dinner, get ready for school. What have you done at school today? Where's the homework? 90% is doing what you're told, and kids like this will find that more difficult. So if you can create 10 minutes to play a game, not a video game really, anything sort of make believe, or if it has to be outside, play football, but where you can help them, if they're making something, if they're like Lego or doll play, depending what age they are, and you can do different things with teenagers, just make them the apple of your eye and let them lead it. And you'll be quite surprised how their creativity increases. I see this with my own eyes. So if they're making a Lego person, you use, I used to teach English to pay my way through medical school, the present continuous tense. What do I mean by that? You are picking up the red brick. Oh, you've put the tractor into the garage. Just describing what they're doing, like a sort of sports commentator on the radio. And they might think, oh, what are you saying that for? You can actually see them enjoy filling these warmth, what I call love darts going in. And it's their agenda. If they want to change, I mean, obviously, if they put their fingers in the power plug, you say, oh, stop doing that. But you don't. But otherwise, you let it see where they go. Or if they perhaps do a drawing together. I find, both boys and girls like doing drawings, but try not to teach. Don't say, oh, hang on, that that cloud's the wrong colour or the sky's the wrong colour, and try not to ask questions. Oh, is that an elephant or is that a giraffe? Because immediately you're changing the agenda to you. You're trying to get into the child's world and appreciate whatever they're doing. Wow, I love the green of that grass and that sort of thing. Oh, that's a sun, isn't it? Just appreciate what they're doing. This is their 10 minutes of the day. And so no criticisms, no questions, if possible. So that makes a great bedrock, because this will get inside the child. So that buys you a bit of credit when you do say, come on, time to turn off whatever it is, the TV. That builds it up. And then you will find yourself doing these techniques during the day. And as I mentioned before, praising them, actually specific, I like the way you do whatever it might be, tidy up the toys or something like that, will help. This is something particularly important for ADHD, very clear commands, not be good, but I want you to, whatever it might be. Put the Barbie doll into the box, whatever it might be. Very quickly, once they start moving, thank you for putting the Barbie doll in the box. Because ADHD kids, you can't wait for 5-10 seconds. You've got to get in right away. Well done for putting that in the box, because they're going to have moved on. But it will stick. It doesn't feel like it. They probably need more praises than a typically developed kids. They probably need it 3 times as many, because it can go in one ear and out the other, because that's part of the nature of ADHD. But it does work. And actually, we've done studies showing for kids who can be a bit oppositional and challenging, ADHD doesn't debar these methods from working. And this is true of my own studies, and we've done something called a meta-analysis where we took 1,800 kids who went through a parenting program and showed that the presence of ADHD did not diminish its effects. So hang on in there. So that's the positive bit. And then consequences, they might not look as though they're listening, but they probably are, the usual stuff. In a calm voice, I'm sorry, but if you don't do this, you're not going to get your video game tomorrow. Consequences should be ones that matter for the child, and they should be within really the same day if possible, because it's holding in mind next week or even 2 or 3 days time, saying you're not going to go swimming on Saturday. If you do that on Wednesday, they won't remember. It's got to be very instantaneous, really. No second helping of pizza if you don't eat your greens.
Yeah, it's that now and not now element, isn't it? That whether it's praise or a consequence, that it has to be immediate, because the brain moves on so quickly that it becomes hard to then connect it. That's been my understanding. So why, therefore, is it important to bring out the best in our children? Why is it important to kind of adapt our, behaviours or change the ways that we parent them to help develop that within them?
Basically, because they're going to be happier and you're going to be happier, because you'll see them thrive and you're setting them both, the benefits are within 1 minute, but they're also within 10 and 15 years. If you can do these things, we've done follow-up studies now, I don't know, 8 to 10 year follow-up of kids like this, and something as well as being much easier to handle at home, less so-called conduct problems and difficulties. They did better in basic tests of reading and learning. I think partly because if you get control of them, they're more likely to sit down and do their homework at home. But this really actually affected their core ability, their reading test scores went up.
And is that because they feel better about themselves in general?
I think they feel better about themselves, and they're more able to learn because they're in a calmer mental state and feel better about themselves, just as you say, and feel better in class. We haven't talked about classroom management today, but the same sort of principles apply to teachers.
Yeah.
And spread the love. The whole household gets a bit happier when you feel you know what you're doing. And it won't be easy. Of course, it'll be 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And I think as a parent, just hanging on in there is really important. It will get better. Attention does increase over time. Your brain goes on growing till they're 25. And I would say, more than half won't need medication or just take it for exams or things like that in late teenage. And some adults take it too. But actually, scanning the horizon, being on the go and being aware of what's going on can be quite an asset. You said you worked in sort of the more commercial, in the sort of advertising world. This can be really a cool asset to have. It's going to be less good if you're going to be a barrister who's got to read briefs for 6 hours at a time that are very boring. But in many more sociable things, ADHD can actually be an asset.
Yeah, there are many, many amazing positive attributes to ADHD, aren't there? And I think often we end up focusing a lot on the negatives, because certainly when you're parenting children, it's hard and you're managing yourself and regulating yourself in response to these things too. So it's a continuous effort, and that can be really tiring. But I think the rewards in the long term for me are certainly well worth it. I think that's, to some degree why I've even ended up with this podcast, because I have really, really, really grown to understand almost how, in some ways, and this is not to overlook the very, very real challenges that ADHD brings for people day to day, but I do think there are positives. I do think there are gifts there if we can help children in particular through the early years, through school, to a situation or to the stage in life where they become an adult and they get to choose their own path and they get to kind of spread their wings a bit. That's certainly how I see it for my son, for my children. I just want to give them the best possible launch pad I can, because, school's not easy when you have ADHD. So
it's not absolutely. But it can have advantages, and some people are very good at sport who have ADHD, and that's when they're very quick to react as well. So that's important. So, I mean, because of that, and during lockdown, I was very concerned that parents couldn't come to face-to-face meetings in my clinic. So I did launch a website called Parenting Matters, parentingmatters.co.uk, where we have a whole course that helps parents get into that. And I hope be very interested in people's reactions to it. They can email us. We try to make it fun. We have fun little video clips. We have quizzes. We have a parenting style quiz to find out if you're balanced or authoritarian and super strict, or a bit, hey, let it all hang out, laissez-faire. And from that you can try and get it right. And we have all the methods I've been talking about, as well as for parents. Sometimes, I mean, we sometimes want the kids just to count. I wouldn't even count to 5, just to count to 3 before they react. And sometimes the parents too, just to hang on.
Absolutely, because I think regulating yourself sometimes as a parent can be the hardest challenge. That's probably the bit at the beginning of this I really wasn't so aware of, how you have to work immensely hard to manage your own responses to things before then managing the child. So that's massively important.
I think it is. And of course, because there is a genetic and familial element to it, some parents are going to be like that. I can think of people I saw in clinic recently, a mother and a father, and I started writing instructions just about to go to one, and I snatched it away. The other parent snatched it away. They just couldn't stop themselves. So, it is important. But I think the recognition of it and the way we can combine medication and psychological management as parents and as teachers, it can really transform it.
I'll include in our show notes links to the Parenting Matters course. I didn't actually realise you started it in lockdown, which is really interesting and obviously makes sense, because I know I'd read that you talked about the fact that there's only so many families that you can treat in a clinic, even if they can get to you. But it's amazing to have this resource that people can tap into to kind of explore more techniques and other things that they can do alongside other methods of treatment to just help their child.
And I've started doing webinars now and having blogs and stuff for free. People do have to pay for the course because it just costs money to use the server. I don't make any money out of it.
That sounds really interesting. So what one piece of advice would you like to leave parents listening to help them feel less alone on this ADHD journey?
It would be stay positive and hang on in there. I have followed up kids who are now in their 30s and 40s, and very few have turned out badly. And it's usually due to the interaction of their ADHD and lots of other things going on in their lives. So I'm very optimistic, and I think we can do so much. And many of the things that we do with ADHD kids are pretty helpful for all children, actually.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. And it's a very optimistic note to end on, because I think sometimes as parents, wherever we are in this, however old our children are, however hard it might seem in the moment, there is a tendency to, you worry naturally, don't you? You fear the worst. The kind of possible outcomes and all this stuff. So it's amazing to hear. It's quite a relief, actually, to hear that from someone who has clinical experience of working with people over a very, very long period of time, to know that it will be okay.
I think it will be okay. And I think, if you like, ADHD children are somewhat more sensitive to their environment than other kids. They're not just whatever, water off a duck's back. So if you pour that good stuff in, it will come back out. It'll stick. It's like building a house. Yes, there will be times when the roof leaks and you have terrible winds and rain and things like that. But hang on in there, because you are constructing a child, if you like it. I mean, that sounds a bit passive because, of course, they've got their own genes and way of doing things. But if you pour good stuff in, you'll get good stuff out, would be my overall message. And so in my Parenting Matters website, we talk about love and limits. You need to give them the loves, but they also need limits. It's not about letting them run wild. You don't want to end up with a spoiled brat who feels entitled and that they're superior to other people and the rules don't apply to them. I mean, I know some become prime minister, but it's generally not a good characteristic.
So love and limits, I think that's really nice. It's very simple and it's an easy one to remember when you're in the thick of it. So yes, so thank you so much, Stephen, for sharing your expertise with us today.
Claire, it's such a pleasure, and I salute you for the work you've done in trying to make it better for everybody who's exposed to this condition.
Oh, thank you. That's incredibly kind. And I have no doubt that this will be immensely valuable and benefit to parents that are listening, and will indeed, no doubt, go on to check out your Parenting Matters course. So thank you. Thank you, Professor
Cheers.
Stephen.
Lovely to speak.
If you'd like to learn more about Professor Stephen's work and his online Parenting Matters course, then please do check out our show notes below for more information. Or if you'd like to find out about how I can help support you and your children with personalised ADHD coaching, then please do head to allaboardadhd.com. You can also find me on Instagram at allaboardadhd. Most importantly, if you enjoyed this episode and found it helpful, please can you follow and review All Aboard ADHD to help other parents find this podcast and welcome them aboard our journey too. Thank you for listening to All Aboard.